Behind every amazing flavor is an amazing human who has perfected their craft. Welcome to Flavors Unknown, a behind-the-scenes look at new flavors and the chefs, pastry chefs, and bartenders who create them, with your host, Emmanuel.
Today is a very special episode. COVID-19 hit the US hard in March and had a disastrous impact on the restaurant industry. On April 1st, I recorded this panel discussion with 3 chefs representing different regions of the country. It was recorded exactly 1 week after the passing of Chef Floyd Cardoz after a COVID-19 diagnosis. My 3 guests are Chef Naomi Pomeroy from Beast in Portland, Oregon, Chef Ian Boden from The Shack in Stoughton, Virginia, and Chef Gabriel Kreuther from 2 Michelin star restaurant in Manhattan, New York City. I am your host, Emmanuel Roche. Welcome to another episode of the Flavors Unknown podcast. Thank you for listening today. If you are new to the show, I have been in the food industry for more than 20 years, both in Europe and in the US, and every other week, I have a conversation with chefs, pastry chefs, or bartenders from different parts of the country. You can find the show notes at flavorsunknown.com. Thank you so much, for accepting my invitation to be part of this panel, on my podcast, Flavors Unknown. It is really a special episode, very different from all the previous episodes that I've done. COVID-19, that's the story today, is impacting US economy. And as a result, social distancing has a devastating effect on the restaurant industry. So early on, we have seen people that started to cancel their dinner plans. Then they started to favor, grocery shopping versus takeout. And finally, in mid-March, a lot of restaurants were ordered to close and other, unfortunately, closed temporarily, or even some already not announced definitely because of no income. So I have invited the 3 of you because you represent different geographical parts of the US and different restaurant profiles. So we have Chef Naomi Pomeroy. You are based in Portland, Oregon, and your restaurant Beast has helped define Portland as one of the America's most culinary creative cities. So Naomi, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Then we have Chef Ian Boden. You are located at the beautiful foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. And with your restaurant, The Shack in Stoughton, Virginia, you contributed to the revival of the Southern cuisine. So Chef Ian, welcome to Flavors Unknown.
Thank you for having me.
And finally, Chef Gabriel Kreuther. You are based in Manhattan, New York. And with your 2 Michelin star restaurants, you have proven that the market for fine dining remains, at a high level. Chef Gabriel, welcome back to the show, as we had the pleasure to have an interview with you in November last year.
Thank you.
So you guys obviously are living very difficult times. So first I want to ask you, how are you doing, personally? So I don't know who wants to start.
I can start. This is Naomi. And personally, I feel like, old habits die hard. We were just talking before we started the show about how chefs aren't really used to sleeping that much anyway. I feel like I've just kind of dug my heels in and started working a lot on policy and trying to, get some federal support for my friends across the industry and have people understand kind of the danger that our restaurants are in. So I've been filming some commercials and doing some work with a new coalition that we formed. And so actually I've been almost busier than ever. And in a way that helps me probably not be so in touch with just how fragile everything is right now. And, of course, I feel very sad when I pause and stop to think about it. It was really hard to let my staff go, people that have worked with me for many, many years. And that's really tough. But of course, I'm working really hard around the clock to try to see how we can open back up again when the time is right.
Yeah. So you have closed the restaurant, correct?
Yeah, we closed on March 15th.
Yeah, and that's a decision that you guys have taken, correct?
Yeah, actually, before we were forced to close, we decided it was the right thing for us to do just based on, the virus and feeling like, okay, reservations are already down. Maybe they were down about 40% when we closed. So it was already a really steep drop. And already they were recommending social distancing, but my restaurant is really small. It's about 800 square feet, and we have 2 communal dining tables, and we do a 6-course tasting menu, so everyone's in there for about 2.5 hours and sitting like really close to each other. It's very small. So it wasn't really possible for us to apply the social distancing to our restaurant. And we felt like it was important to keep the community safe. So we just opted to close. And then a couple of days later, like 3 or 4 days later, is when the governor forced all restaurants to close for in-room dining. So we weren't very far ahead of the curve, but we definitely decided before we were told to.
Okay. Chef Ian, what's, how do you feel? How are you doing?
Stressed, very stressed. We're kind of in a similar situation as Naomi. We're in a very rural area, about 2.5 hours outside of DC. We didn't feel it until, I can't remember the date. It was a specific Wednesday when it kind of blew up in New York and some other bigger markets. We'd just gotten an amazing review in the Washington Post, which was super exciting, something that we thought would never going to happen. We just had our 6-year anniversary. Business was jamming, and it went from a full dining room every night to watching reservations just drop off. And as I saw them drop off, we made the call to switch our model, try to pivot and do takeout and delivery, because I was concerned about my staff, as all of us are. I wanted to do everything I could to ensure that my staff could eat. I ended up, we're super small as well. We're 26 seats. We're just a little smaller than Naomi. My kitchen's about 120 square feet. My dining room's about 400 square feet. So social distancing for us is non-existent as well. What I decided to do, I gave all my front of the house staff raises, put them up to $10 an hour, which for us is in this area is huge, and hoped that the generosity of our clientele and our community would help put them through and make them be able to eat. And that just wasn't reality. Once the tips come in and we pay our payroll tax and they pay their end of payroll tax, they're getting $20 on a check. It's just not enough. So we decided, I guess on Sunday, I sent a text message to all my staff telling them that we were going to shut down. They've been very included in the process since day one. When we first talked about it, we had a staff meeting and I said, if anybody's uncomfortable doing this, please let me know. And everybody was on board. From there, it was like, okay, well, if anybody doesn't feel well at all, they cannot be here. We set in some protocols. As soon as you enter the restaurant, you wash your hands. When you leave the restaurant, you put on gloves to bring stuff to people at the curbside. Sanitize your car if you're doing a delivery, all that stuff. The reality is that we were just spinning wheels. The restaurant was paying its bills. The staff isn't making any money. And the anxiety and stress of the whole thing, the cosmic psyche was bearing down on all of us.
Yeah. So you say it's tough for you to sleep, correct? That's what you were telling me before we started recording.
Yeah. Sleep is just kind of non-existent right now. And then, cooking, as somebody in the hospitality, as all of us are in the hospitality business, I mean, part of what we do is interact with our guests, and to not have that interaction and cook food that we don't normally cook to an empty dining room is honestly depressing. It was weighing on all of us.
Yeah. So, and what about you, Chef Gabriel?
For me, it's a little bit the same as we just listened to both of you guys. Stressful. The world is upside down. It started first that when everybody talked about COVID-19, it started with seeing the private dining home parties to cancel moving forward. So little by little, the percentage cramped up on the cancellations. And then, like Naomi said, the reservation went down at the beginning by 50%, and then by 70%. So at that point, we had to make a decision, but also the decision was, you can make the decision on closing what's the safest, the best thing to do. And the safest thing for everybody, for the health of everyone and not putting anybody in harm's way, the best was to really close. And then, the mayor followed up in New York City to mandate all restaurant closings. But the hardest thing really in that whole process was literally to shut the restaurant, clean it up, clean up that so that when you reopen, it's in good shape. But also doing those personal phone calls to people that worked with me for 15, 12, 10, 8 years and tell them that we're forced to close and temporarily we have to lay them off. And those are very hard conversations that we have no control of it. The restaurant business, what we do every day, it's a family. We're spending more time with the people that work with us than with our own family. And it's really heartbreaking to see the way everything went and how everything's going now still. And we no end in sight. So I think not having the answers, not having a timeline on anything is adding fuel to the fire. It's tough. And, it's the people really that matter the most in our business. But on the other hand, we're fortunate that we also, are healthy we not, but I know, when I heard the news about Floyd Cardoz, that was really, really heartbreaking because for a while we worked in the same company. So, the stress and the anxiousness is gearing up as it hits closer home, as people that get struck are closer to you and have a name, and that's scary. It's really scary.
Yeah, because at the beginning, I think like everyone was saying, it's a little bit more a difficult like flu situation and different context. And then, as you said, suddenly when the illness starts to hit people that are close to you, and with the scale that it's taking, at the moment, it's really frightening and of course, very difficult for a lot of people to live. So you mentioned that that looking at the hardest part about social distancing or the COVID-19 was letting people go or not having really like a timeline, from when it's going to disappear. Or for you, Chef Ian, is like the idea of like not having interaction with a guest, because being a chef, it's about hospitality. What are like the other tough moments or tough things for you guys when it comes to the situation of COVID-19 or social distancing?
One of the hardest parts is just knowing that so many restaurants are connected to so many purveyors. And, we all have a community network that goes way beyond even just our family. Like Chef was saying, we go 16 hours a day, every day with the same people. They see them more than our family. And the same goes for people like the purveyors, people bring us the fish and bring us vegetables and, just people that we buy meat from. And, the same people, Beast has been open for 12 and a half years, but I had other restaurants before, some of the people I've been working with for over 20 years. And, it's really painful to know that we're not giving any business to those farms right now either. And here in Oregon, people are just coming into their growing season. Finally, they're offering like some beautiful small spring vegetables. And, we made it through the winter time, which is like the hard time for us. And, now these businesses that have been growing vegetables for us don't have anywhere to sell them to. So I think one of the biggest and most difficult things is knowing that the chain is pretty long of people that are getting affected by this. Not only do we have to worry about our staffs and how will they make it, unemployment, and I would love to be able to. I paid everybody's health care, and I gave them, double payment, 2 checks at the end. But, my business is out of money, just like everybody else. And I feel like it's really hard for employees, but, I know that they're going to be okay. And I offered if anybody needs to go to the restaurant and take some flour, leftover butter, some beans from a storage area, it's okay. It's okay, if you need that. Or I can give you like a loan if you need a loan until the unemployment checks start coming. But the really other very sad thing is that the chain of distribution for restaurants is long, and we have really committed relationships with these people. And I don't want to see some small farmers not able to survive this.
Mm-hmm. And there's like no real structure or supply chain in order for those farmers to sell those vegetables and, in the near future, fruits to the consumer directly, correct? There's not the infrastructure for that.
No, it's too difficult. Even our smaller grocery stores here, buy a pretty strong volume of like the same kind of thing. They just want like one shape of apple, one type of lettuce, and these farmers are small and they're growing really specialized products for us. And, even like we met last year and talked about the seed catalogs. And we go through with farmers and they plant specific things for us, and they're unique and interesting that customers don't really know how to use. So they can't just go to the grocery store and sell them.
Some of our farmers are actually setting up, we're actually going to let them use our restaurant for a drop point for our Heritage Pig Farmer. Before we shut down, we were trying to do pantry staples. So we have a pasta extruder, so we're extruding pastas for people. We were making sauces out of meats and vegetables from our farmers, trying to help keep them going as well. So there, in our area, there's definitely some direct to consumer operations setting up. The Beard House is supposed to give me a list of resources for small farmers that are growing unique products. There's apparently some resources for them for some financial relief. But as Naomi was saying as well, the supply chain is huge. I mean, we also deal with reps. Our reps are all hurting as well. Our wine reps, Virginia's big wine country, just like Oregon is and New York is. And all of those local wineries are struggling. They just harvested. I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and they are planting 32,000 or some ridiculous amount of vines this week because they have to. Harvest came in. They're still in the wine rooms making wine, fermenting grapes. And they're not going to have a market for that because there's unfortunately not going to be as many outlets for it once this is all said and done. So yeah, it goes deep.
Gabriel, any additional thoughts on the topic?
I mean, New York City as a whole, with the concentration of restaurants that we have in New York City, when everything happened and we were told to shut down and close, one of the big stuff was to really control the merchandise and what we had already in storage, produces and meat and fish and all that stuff. And that's when City Harvest kicked in, and a lot of it, I think, that will probably be the biggest food donation in history, probably in New York City, when all the restaurants started to hand over food to City Harvest so that organization can take care of the neediest in the city, because, that it's just, there is everything, but there is also so many people that are struggling to get every day a meal on the table. So that was the New York City piece, was really to work with the charities and hand over all that food. But then this whole thing, social distancing, I think one of the hardest things is really not having the contact with the purveyors anymore, not seeing them come. When a purveyor comes and delivers you something, a farmer, you shake hands with him, you have a little story, and he drops the order, and that contact, that social contact on what's going on out there and what they are doing, what's next. Not interacting with the staff anymore is very hard because, all these people worked there with their heart, putting their heart in every day. And now suddenly we're told to not interact with them anymore because of that danger. And on the other hand, I have my father-in-law, I have a little daughter who's 2.5 years old. So I think the heartbreaking piece is really to not being able for her or for us to literally visit him because he's in his 90s. And right now, everybody's at danger. And it's too dangerous for him. So it's kind of heartbreaking. Little things, the simplest thing, joys that life can bring you are right now canceled. And that's really hard to deal with. I mean, and it's for everybody. So we have to do the right thing in order to go through this, I guess.
I mean, you're saying this, and it's true that we see in a lot of, social media, family posting, that situation when you see sometimes the grandparents, outside, on the window in the garden.
On the window, yeah.
Through the window to interact with their grandkids. And it's really sad. But on the other hand, you see I have to say, crazy people that are still these things like not understanding the situation. And then they are gathering. And there was a last example with this great situation of like this, the hospital Navy ship coming into like the New York harbor, a few days ago. And then you have a crowd, which is, looking at it and taking pictures, and because probably they want to post on, their social media. But, where is the social distancing here? Anyhow, sorry, that's a different topic, but it drives me crazy.
We had the same thing in DC with the cherry blossoms. Tourists and residents were out walking around the cherry blossoms, taking pictures.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. People don't realize, the situation. And then by continuing this type of behavior, it is lingering, and it's not going to, it's going to be difficult to flatten the curve, as how they say. I read an article, I think Chef David Chang just said recently that without government intervention, then there probably will be no service industry in the future. What's your thoughts about this statement?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think it might be overstated a little bit, saying that there'll be no service industry. I think more poignantly, there'll only be a corporate service industry. What the government's offered us at this point, as far as a bailout goes, is, excuse my language, they're basically offering us more debt. My restaurant's in a slightly different situation than most, and I feel guilty and fortunate at the same time. We opened up for no money. We have zero debt, and we have savings. We're poised to come back, but I know I'm in the minority on this. I know friends all over the world right now shutting restaurants down that can't afford to incur more debt. And it doesn't matter if it's 2.5% or 3% over 10 years. That doesn't help. And all the tax credits that they're offering are also because I feel like it's first off, it's a Band-Aid on an amputee. Secondly, what people don't realize is that once you come back and you open the doors, what it's going to cost to get the restaurant open and operating again, what it's going to cost to have payroll in the bank or payroll covered, all of those loans are going to be due at the same time. I think it lulls people into this false sense of security, honestly.
Naomi or Gabriel?
It's highly true. This is an industry that has a very low profit margin and can't deal with this situation on its own. And it all depends where you are in the country, what it takes to operate and open a restaurant. But without intervention from the government, it all depends. Now, don't lose context on that. It all depends how long we're going to be shut. Right now, we only shut for 2.5, 3 weeks. They're talking about a couple months here. Longer this thing is going to be closed, longer we're going to be shut, harder it's going to be to deal with, because people who have loans, they have landlords, everything, we don't know. We don't have any answers. The answers are not good enough. The help so far that is pushed out by the government is not good enough to make things work. So I think this is going to be a back and forth situation until they come up with something that makes sense. Like Ian said before, they're offering loans, but you're creating more debt here. It needs to be something that is helpful to reopen, basically. This is, there is no easy answer, but I believe that if there is no intervention, the fallout will be huge.
What about you, Naomi?
Oh, that was a great article, and it's kind of exactly what we've been talking about with the Independent Restaurant Coalition. Is just, we've formed really quickly, like around on the 18th, which was like 2 weeks ago or so, and are trying really hard to push through interests of smaller businesses and what do we really, need. And of course, the CARES Act that passed on Friday last week and was signed into law is just starting now. And it's really like a small Band-Aid. I think one good thing is that, it's forgivable, the loans, if you spend it on your staff and you spend it on payroll and utilities and whatnot, then it just becomes a grant. And really, it's designed to be more like a grant. If you have to use it for something else, like for personal use, it's a very 0.5 interest rate, payable over 2 years. So it's really not even close to sufficient. We're talking about, like Chef said, we're not sure when we're going to be able to open again. So giving us a little lifeline right now, when all of our employees are probably already trying to collect unemployment anyway, isn't really doing what it needs to do. For us, I think we need, actually, one of the biggest things that we're fighting for at the Independent Restaurant Coalition is to get insurance companies, to get the federal government to mandate that insurance companies should be responsible for the fact that they've, insured us, which this is exactly what insurance is for, right? This is a national disaster. Everybody's closed. And the insurance companies created loopholes like virus exclusions, or for myself, I didn't have a virus exclusion, but I did have something where, my insurance adjuster called and said, there's no physical damage to your property. you can't be open because there's no evidence of physical damage. So you can't have business interruption insurance. So, I mean, I think there's a pretty strong argument to be made for the fact that coronavirus is physical damage. I mean, but, that's going to take a long legal battle. And, I think one of the things that's been very interesting in the work I've been doing is realizing that it's almost like an inside secret with chefs and restaurant owners that chefs aren't getting rich. Like some people see chefs like Dave Chang on TV, or, they see us and they think like, oh, you got a great write-up in the Washington Post, you must be rolling in the dough. The truth is that no matter how big or small your operation is, everybody's really living like this week's sales are paying last week's bills. Nobody's getting rich. We're all living paycheck to paycheck, essentially, even the restaurants themselves. And so I think we've been paying into a system with insurance for the whole life of our restaurants being open, and they should be accountable for that. And also, we're fighting for because they are going into round 4 funding. And another thing that we're fighting for is, to get some tax breaks. Why does other big businesses paying, 3% tax or no tax or, things like that? It's like we pay like 20% taxes in our industry, and our profit margins are, usually somewhere between like 5 and 10%. At the top.
At the top,
lots of people are just
I don't think people understand that.
Lots of people are just break even. I mean, every interview I'm doing, I've been trying to explain to the press, if a business-minded person looked at our business models, they would all say like, hey, you should shut down. This is not a good business,
Yeah.
So in a long-term way, what we're trying to do is talk a little bit about educating people in Washington, educating, the general public that if you want to have these unique and special restaurants around, we have to have a bailout. We have to have real grants and real money given, tax breaks given, insurance company money coming through, or the landscape that you're going to see on the other side of this is, a lot of Papa John's pizza, a lot of, chain restaurants, a lot of strip mall restaurants, and a unique and amazing fabric that is all of us. Like this call today, we all have different kinds of restaurants in different parts of the country. And if people still want to celebrate that, then they're going to have to put their money where their mouth is.
Thank you, Naomi, for saying that. Gabriel, you want to add, anything?
Yes, I believe that Naomi has a lot of things right here, and I completely agree. And on the other, the closings that we have are not by choice; they are mandated. And I believe that when the government comes and mandates you to close a restaurant, they have to have also a plan to make you survive, to have all of these people that are working in those places survive. The restaurant business, the small businesses are like the greatest employers in the United States, literally. And there needs to be some help. A restaurant is the DNA, is the social fabric of a neighborhood, of a society. If people want that back, we need to figure out a way on bringing us back to a sustainable level. A private place, a small place cannot deal with a problem of that size. It's too big. We literally wiped out. It's a national disaster in this industry, and there needs to be some thoughtful help here.
So you're talking about like the insurance companies. You're talking about the tax breaks. What about the whole situation with rent? Because I don't know what's the percentage, but I would say the vast majority of the restaurants around the country, they don't obviously own the location that they are at, and the rent is still there. So if there's anything that could be done to help there, that level?
I believe that it's a case by case, because every single landlord has a different mindset. It all depends what kind of people you're dealing with what kind of companies you're dealing with. And I believe that everything can be worked out if there is an honest conversation. Right now, like everything else, there are no answers. There are no people, everybody's trying to scramble. Everybody's trying to figure out a plan on how they can save their own house, right? That's the landlords in the same boat as, depending what kind of landlords. Everybody's trying to look at this and see what can be done. In places like New York City, where you have huge landlords. A restaurant in a building, a restaurant in a neighborhood is the social fabric of that neighborhood, is what brings also the value to a tower, to an area. And everybody's trying to figure out what's the next step. On a personal level, I think here and there things will be figured out, but it's not an easy situation. It all depends how stubborn the landlords are.
I think it also depends, that's totally true. And it also depends how, a lot of landlords, obviously they don't own their building outright. They have a bank loan also.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so they, when we don't pay them, then they can't pay, and then they could have it repossessed by the bank. And then suddenly we're also out of a restaurant because the bank has taken it back over. So, it's a big chain, just like the distributors and purveyors. It's a big chain of effect. And yeah, we need to, one thing that could help with that is, we're talking with our local government about putting a moratorium on commercial evictions, so that, we're asking our governor, make sure that, for the next, until we can open again, it's not legal to push someone out. And it really, what it comes down to is, when 2008, when we bailed out Wall Street, from the recession, and we bailed out big banks. And now it's like time for the big banks to bail us out. It's like we taxpayers paid for that. And so now it's like here we are, and we need help. We need them to say they give forgiveness to the landlords who can give forgiveness to us. So it's going to take a big chain. And the federal government, they can impose that. They can say what needs to happen, but they have to decide about what they value, and that's really what this comes down to, is just like, Chef Gabriel said, we have to, as a society, decide what do we want to work to preserve.
Mm-hmm. What can be done then? You are doing, this with the Independent Restaurant Coalition, yourself, Naomi, but what can be done at the level of, all the chefs around the country? What do you advise, in order to activate, all the things that you just mentioned?
I think mostly it's about education. Mostly it's about explaining to people. Like Dave Chang's article was great yesterday, because the New York Times, a lot of people read that, and a lot of people maybe didn't understand how at risk restaurants are. And I think the more we talk about it in our communities, you never know who can help you in a situation like this. Like, we're in an emergency situation, and there are helpers everywhere. There are people that know someone else that knows someone else that, knows a senator. We're not very far removed, if we look at our connections, from people who can have influence over these choices. So the more we can even talk to local representatives, talk to your mayor, see if you can get a hold of the governor. If every business that stands up and says, I can't make it if you don't help me, is more power, adding power to the voices,
Our situation here is strange because we've had 3 emergency city council meetings that are all done via internet, of course, and they've talked nothing about small business. They're still giving parking tickets in our town to small business owners who are trying to do what they can to survive. In my opinion, it's about leadership from top down, and if we don't have leadership on a federal level, the local level is useless. They're waiting for marching orders, and there is none. For me, it's really about leadership.
That is absolutely right. And I think, as much as we can do to keep, as a state, Oregon has had to make some decisions above and before the federal level, and we aren't getting good guidance from Washington. But as we slowly kind of get our message out there, I do feel like we have the ability to have it heard. I mean, I think if it's not coming from the top down, then I think maybe it needs to come from our representatives in Congress and our senators. So, hopefully.
But all of this takes time. It's a very long process, and that's frightening.
It's scary because it's not on our side at all.
So how can restaurants, prepare for something like this moving forward?
That's a really hard question.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can ever prepare for something like this. It's a complete curveball here. This is last time society dealt with something like this was beginning of the century, like literally 100 years ago.
You're talking about the Spanish flu, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We are in uncharted territory here, and preparing. We hope that after hopefully we coming out of that in a good way, and hopefully we never gonna have to deal with that again in our lifetime. But how can we prepare? I think at the end of the day, the only people that can really prepare for something like this is actually the leadership in government, the leadership in public health, education of the people of what can happen. I think through that crisis, we can probably learn a lot. We probably will see what was the good steps that we took and what were the foolish steps that the society took, and hopefully educate from the ground up. Basically, it's and having people listen to what best practices are moving forward. We are we see how people behave right now with the spring breakers that are not caring for anything. The younger generation that is really not tuned in, because at the beginning they were told that it doesn't really affect them. So they're kind of like careless about it. At the end of the day, I think through that crisis, we're going to learn how we can appreciate each other on a different level. I think we will learn something that's going to come out, the good manners and respect maybe. There needs to be it's going to help to reset the basics in society, I believe, this crisis. But preparing, I think you don't prepare for anything like this as an industry. I think you prepare for this as a country, just like for earthquakes. How do you prepare for earthquakes? You do it from the bottom up, from education and what to do and what not to do. At the end of the day, the financials can always be figured out, but it needs to be figured out by leadership. It's not on our level.
This social distancing and people being, let's say, locked down at home. At the moment, it's been 2.5 weeks. As you said, Chef Gabriel, it's going to last maybe a month, maybe another month. So when that situation linger like this, we probably are going to see an impact in terms of, people behavior. So, we have seen this happening when it was the 2008 recession, but it was a different situation because people were able to, go out and go to, restaurants, change their mind and so on. But after
Absolutely,
that,
yes.
So how do you think it's going to, to change the industry, from your point of view?
Well, the industry is going to be impacted, that's for sure. But, we're going to get, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully we're going to be able to, they're going to be able to figure out something, either medication or short-term medication or long-term vaccine. And hopefully then things are coming back into order and that virus is controlled. They're saying that virus is going to be with us forever now, but we need to figure out a way of curtailing the impact it has on society. And hopefully they're coming up with something that will be doing that.
But do you think it's going to change your cooking style, your craft, because people are being more like into a delivery mindset,
I believe short term it will have an impact on what we do when we reopen. Yes, I believe that. But I also believe that there is room. There are people. A restaurant is made for going out and having a good time and doing celebrations, meeting people. It's the social fabric. So it will impact at the beginning, but later on, when everything comes back to normal, I believe that there is a place for us to do what we do. The type of cooking, it all comes down to personal, to every single chef on how he wants to handle it, but also the demand of the guest. There will be a place for everything, But at the beginning, I think it will impact the way we reopen, especially if the distancing is still part of the topic. Because I can imagine, I'm not sure, but I can imagine when they're going to tell us, okay, you okay to reopen, but you only can open at 50% of capacity because of the distancing. I believe that that's probably something that's going to happen. if that's not the case, we may be shut for much longer than we think.
But would a restaurant like Gabriel Kreuther restaurant in New York City would change their model, in the short term at the time of reopening because of the situation and having more takeout, takeouts or that type of thing, which seems to be like completely not conceivable for your restaurant, but.
No, but yeah, we're gonna change our way of approaching it. Of course, it's we have to see when we're gonna be allowed to reopen, and then we're gonna decide if we do some takeouts or not. And also our menu is gonna change. Our offerings gonna change. I think when we come out at the other end of this, people are looking much more to have a relationship and a comforting experience than a very complicated experience. We're gonna adapt to the situation, and we're here to feed people and nurture families and be part of the social gathering. But yes, the offering's going to be changed, going to be different, of course. Yeah.
Ian or Naomi, anyone wants to add their thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, I answered a question yesterday with another person in an interview. I said, I think it's like a 50-50 chance I'll be able to reopen. I don't know if it's something I can really do because I don't know how long this is going to last. I mean, I have enough money to last for a month or two. And then if the, loans come in, maybe I can make it work. But honestly, I think we have no idea. I think we could be maybe 50% less busy when we open, so it's definitely a big unknown right now. And I try really hard not to worry too much about it because, things come and go and change and we have to adapt. And if I made a joke, but I said, if I have to sell some food off my back porch, underground restaurant, like I can do it. Yeah. But, I don't, I'm getting old for that kind of stuff. I mean, I started out underground restaurant many, 25 years ago, but now I'm getting older. So I don't want to have to hustle like that. But, we can do anything. Chefs are very adaptable. We just want to cook and feed people and it might look different. Maybe some restaurants definitely won't survive this change. But I think, for me, I want to look at the silver lining for me, even though it's kind of early. We're in the middle of the crisis. It's horrible. So many people are dying. We are also coming together as a community in a way that we haven't had time to come together because everybody's working 16 hours a day in their own little restaurant. Now we have an opportunity to tell our story, to come together, to share our struggles with each other. And in some ways, it's like helping to be able to hear, even though it's very sad, we know it's not happening to any one of us. It's happening to all of us. And so I think we have some opportunity to have us strength in the numbers.
Okay. Ian, any thoughts?
So I opened my first restaurant in this community literally in 07. I opened January 2nd of 07 was my first restaurant here. And obviously the market crashed in 08 and we struggled a lot. And what I noticed once the market started to recover is that the people that dined with us were fewer, but they were willing to spend a little bit more money. There's the people that are traveling to Europe to eat. They're traveling all over the United States to eat. So I think we're going to find it's less of a traveling Epicurean community and more of a local Epicurean community, where people, instead of spending $300 to go to Europe and eat at, the world's famous restaurants, they're going to stay in their community and spend more with them. It's better to go spend $200 in your local community than spend $1,000 in somebody else's. So I think that it might be a little bit more insular. I also think that our local farmers are going to thrive if they get through this, when they can get through this, because I think people are going to be able to put more of a face with their food, which is something that I know all of us have been fighting for years, for people to realize, that every dish that comes out of the kitchen was made by a human, and they are a human, and they're not a servant. They're a human being, families and concerns, and have had bad days just like everybody else. I think and I hope that there's a lot more understanding and the communities get a little bit more tight-knit. I think those of us that can get through this, and I hope we all do, I think there's definitely light there. There's definitely light.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm looking at the time, and I want to be respectful of of yours. I have two, let's say, quick question for you at the end. What are you cooking at the moment, personally? Obviously you are not cooking in your restaurant, but as a chef, what are you two cooking for, like during this time, that brings you comfort?
On my side, I'm going back to very basic things. The other day I did an onion tart. So an onion tart. I do homemade spätzle with some. I had some pork in the freezer, so I used the pork to do kind of like a pork and mushroom ragu with a little bit creamy sauce with the spätzle. Last night I had some frozen salmon fillet in the freezer, so I took that out and I did it breaded with oatmeal and roasted it and served it with spinach. A lot of compost salads, a lot of I packed up on some canned goods also, some peas and beans and stuff like that. So I'm using that with a mix of fresh vegetables to do soups that I finish with some protein in it. I do something with cauliflower, kind of like things that are easy to do, family style, that are comforting. I'm going to do a cauliflower recipe that my mother used to do, which is cooking the cauliflower in salted water and then using the cooking liquid to do a sauce with it, and then pour it over the cauliflower with some hard-boiled eggs and cheese and just gratin in the oven. And that's a one dish meal, things like that. What's favored right now is the one dish meals, and try to have have it mixed up so that you don't get bored, because right now, you have to play with what's available to you. You cannot just go in the supermarket every day. So you're trying to buy for, 10 days to 2 weeks, just doing very homey style cooking that is very comforting. And I think that's what the focus is, That's on my side. That's what we do.
And what about you, Chef Ian?
I mean, honestly, we're not far off. And the only thing that I cooked recently, honestly, a friend of mine went foraging for morels yesterday and brought me
Beautiful.
A couple pounds. And so I had pasta left from the restaurant. Yeah, they were delicious and beautiful.
So what did you do with them?
So my wife grew up foraging mushrooms in the mountains here with her grandma. So the way her grandma always prepared them is she soaked them in a brine she soaked them overnight in a brine, which for me is too long. But I soaked them in a brine for maybe 20 minutes. And then she likes them dredged in a little bit of flour and then fried. So I did some for her because
nice
it makes
crunchy.
My wife very happy. Yeah, super crunchy, and you still get all the delicious flavor of the morel. Just a little bit of salt and pepper, and that's it. And then with the rest of them, I had some pasta left from the restaurant, and I just did a very simple morel cream sauce. So just butter, morels, cream. My wife made some rosemary salt the other day. I sprinkled a little of that in it and tossed it with some pepper dough. That was it. And it made us both very happy, and we smiled for a while, which was nice because we don't get to do that as much. So tonight I have a little yakitori grill at the restaurant that I'm bringing home, and I'm grilling some steaks that we had left from the restaurant. Some fresh asparagus that we just got, going to get grilled, and some broccolini, and I'll make a little lemon vinaigrette to go over everything, and that'll be dinner tonight. But yeah, it's all about something simple and comfortable. Food is the way we feed our families, yes, but it's also how we nourish each other in a spiritual way, I think. So whatever I can do to make my wife feel loved is very important to me right now. And honestly, that's the best thing that's coming out of all of this is I'm used to seeing my wife for 15 minutes every morning. She's asleep when I get home from work. She has a business. I have a business. Both of us are now unemployed. So getting to spend some real time with her is priceless to me. I hate the circumstances of it, but I'm trying to cherish the time.
Okay. So what will be the first thing that both of you will do when the situation is over?
The first thing that I will do, the first thing when the situation is over and we told that we can try to go back to business is to really call back the people that are waiting for a phone call to come back and reform
the team. Mm-hmm.
The team, basically. It's the people that are the most important in our business. It's the team. It's the time it takes to put a team together. It's the time it takes to educate a team. It's the time it takes to have that chemistry in a team. It's really looking forward to have that positive phone call, like says, hey, come back, instead of like, too bad, I need to let you go. So I'm looking forward for that conversation, and hopefully that conversation is not too far away.
What about you, Chef Ian?
Exactly the same. I can't wait to get my staff back. I stress and worry about them every day. Closing the restaurant was, I've closed a restaurant before under very different circumstances. And it's one of the most painful things for me that I've experienced. And doing it this time felt the same, except I know that there's something positive at the end. So being able to bring everybody back in and opening the doors, man, I can't wait. I'm pretty sure I will bust into tears the day that we have a full dining room again with all of our guests that have been so amazing, supportive to us all over all these years. I mean, we've been here for 6 years, but I have guests that have been following me for 14 plus years, as I know Chef does as well. And to be able to welcome them back and pour them a glass of champagne and give them a hug instead of this fist bump or 6 foot away wave.
I have to put some bleep in my recording now.
I'm sorry, I have a bad but no, I mean I'm tearing thinking about it. To be honest, I can't wait to have back what we're losing right now, and it will be so much sweeter. It'll be so much sweeter.
Yeah, and it's also seeing the purveyors back, seeing the farmers again and interacting with them and see how those guys went through. Because listen, I grew up on a farm. I know this is not an easy life that they have.
Harder than the chef's life.
Yeah, it's you can compare the chef's life to a farmer's life. It's everything hangs in one little thing, and I'm looking forward to see those people again. It's really. Our business is really a people's business, and it's what makes us who we are. It's the passion that goes in, the team that works with each other, all these people that work with each other. It's much more passion that goes in than anything else, and that's what makes the difference. That's what makes the DNA of a specific restaurant. It's that group that makes it happen.
So, chefs, thank you so much for your participation to the panel today and to be guests on my podcast, Flavors Unknown. I wish you all, the very best for first, stay healthy, you and your families, and then, of course, the very best for your business in the future. And I hope to have you back again, on the show.
Same to you.
Thank you so much.
Stay safe, and make sure that you guys take care of each other, and I'm looking forward to better times, and let's do the right thing. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. We have to be positive, and things are going to change. And in some ways, we're going to come back out of this stronger than we were before.
I am so thankful to the 3 chefs for accepting my invitation to be part of this panel discussion. Chef Naomi Pomeroy had to jump on another call before the end of the panel, hence her missing voice during the last 5 minutes of this recording. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues and tell them to subscribe to the show on any phone podcast app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And they can follow us as well on social media, on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter at Flavors Unknown. My next guest is celebrity chef Roy Yamaguchi from Hawaii. Our conversation was recorded before the coronavirus hit the country. That was a very special moment for me, as the restaurant Roy in Las Vegas was my first exposure to Hawaiian fusion cuisine 15 years ago, and I fell instantly in love with it. I see you in 2 weeks, and until then, remember that people who love to eat are always the best people.
You've just enjoyed another delicious episode of Flavors Unknown. Hungry for more? Hit subscribe. Tell us where you're listening from by leaving a review. And for social media and show notes, head to flavorsunknown.com.